Zero knowledge proof is essentially, oh, and thank you. A zero knowledge proof is essentially a way to prove something is valid without revealing any sort of underlying evidence in the form of identifying information in the context of SSI. So it's a proof of a proof, essentially. One of the most common paradigms is called ZK proofs or ZK snark. ZK snark stands for zero knowledge, succinct, non-interactive argument of knowledge. In SSI sense, the idea would be you have an authorized issuer. You would have a ZK snark intermediary contract that can then be referenced as proof that you are a real person and you were issued by an authoritative issuer or legitimate issuer. Meaning if you call the bank account or bank account representative, they wouldn't have to ask you all of those questions about your mother's maiden name, any sort of like related metadata. They just have to ask you for the ZK snark, zero knowledge proof that you are who you say you are, and then you are validated automatically past that point. So we can get into the nuances of ZK snark, but I don't know if it'd be helpful to get that technical immediately. Maybe we can open it up to the floor. Like, how do you guys define self-sovereign identity? Are there any examples that you can provide? Would anyone like to jump in?
And by the way, hi.
Hi. Well, you covered self and sovereign, but you didn't really cover identity. Me, for one, don't really see my identity as my driver's license or my even my universal credentials. Perhaps that's somewhat more, but the driver's license is just a tool. So in that regard, I think identity is a much broader spectrum, and also a dangerous one. If we put our identity into this immutable network and the policy is not governed by the people owning their identity, and then we still have a huge problem. So those are my 50 cents for now. I hope to lure some other perspectives.
I'd like the springboard. I like the springboard of what Niels just said. For me, the reason I'm in this breakout room is I'd like to learn about identities, but it's the identity of objects, right? And so that's another identity, right? I'm interested in tying an NFT, the physical object. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, no, fantastic. You guys make critical points. You know, driver's license or passport definitely isn't the end all be all or epitome of a kind of identity realized in a physical format. At least in the analog world, it's significant, but it's not, you know, it's not like the blueprint, or it's not a universal identifier. So thank you guys for bringing this up. On the context, in the context of NFTs or object identifiers, this is a great point. So let me just bring up session crews. When you're talking about NFTs related to physical objects, we're breaking this into two different identity chains now, or branches. One is the individual or the holder in the SSI use case. And then the object itself has an identifier, but the link between the object and the holder also has an identifier. So are you concerned about linking NFTs to physical objects similar to, have you heard of Bozon Protocol? Yeah, Bozon
No,
Protocol.
I have not.
Yeah, no, that's a great line of research. It's
Bozon?
Yeah, BOSON protocol. It's by Justin Bannon and their research team. This is initially in the Ethereum ecosystem, but essentially it's a way to link an NFT in the digital world to a physical object. And it's a protocol from where if you redeem a digital NFT for a physical one, it burns the digital one. You can retain ownership of the physical. And if you redeem the physical back into a digital form, they essentially have like an underground storage facility that is like locked out from like human beings to access. It's a somewhat far out idea in a way, but at the same time, there's a lot of nice like theoretical like underpinnings for how NFTs are related to physical objects. So we could have a whole breakout room of Bozon actually, but I'll just leave that there for now. And then just Niels, to your topic about the dangers of immutable networks and policies that are not governed by people owning identity. Are there any dangers that come to mind initially for you in particular that you'd like us to kind of dive deeper into?
Well, CBDCs.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think Niels froze.
So yeah, they're the
Niels, just so you know, you just froze for like 10 seconds.
oh no. I was ranting into the oblivion.
Yeah, you just answered the secret of the universe, right? We just didn't
Oh.
hear it.
Okay. Well, good that you tell me. Otherwise, well, the most looking at our 2-year past with C19 and how governments behave and how COVID passports and all that kind of jazz rolled out, but also upcoming CBDCs, potential social credit scores, IDAS system being rolled out in Europe already. European Commission's not being democrative, if that's a word. I see a lot of potential danger for creating these systems. And in essence, we're free spirits, and tying our identity into a digital frame is not being human, in my perception. Yeah, I hope that's just from the top of my head. There's probably a lot more.
Yeah, no, CBDC and the social credit score use cases are very interesting. I guess, one side of this argument says ownership is paramount, privacy is paramount in the Web3 sense, meaning, if Cambridge Analytica has some focused data mining effort on your social metadata, in an SSI use case in a Web3 sense, technically that would be impossible or near impossible. Do you see that as one of the benefits? I'm just curious about the spectrum of pros and cons here. Is ownership, like, would you rather have ownership of your data self-sovereign, or do you not mind, say, like third-party intermediaries holding on to some of your data?
The privacy by design in my book should be the default. So all data should belong to the owner, not only for privacy, but also it becomes a study of self, right? I mean, Facebook knows more about me than I probably know about myself. So if I would have that data locally and had some sort of AI that could tell me, hey, dude, you're doing this all the time and you get sick 3 days later, perhaps you shouldn't do it. Right? For the positive use case. But I'm not against SSI. We need to discover this thing. But as long as the policy and the interoperability is not at the level it should be, I think we should have like the public interest technology version, which is like tailored to the people. And we should have this interoperability layer with current government. Yeah, that's my stance on it.
Yeah, no, I think the interoperability layer especially if you're thinking of like in an Oracle sense between what we would deem as authorized issuers today in an analog world, which would be, you know, the US federal government or the DMV, is probably essential in this interim phase between where we are now and eventually an SSI ecosystem where there are thousands and thousands of these authorized issuers. But the best we have to go on right now is essentially what we've always used, which is, you know, arguably the governments of the world, as you mentioned, which do present, you know, inherent flaws because we've seen these systems fail. We've seen them be compromised. They're not fully self-sovereign. So good point. Really good point.
Perhaps we should turn it around. I mean, what's the problem statement for SSI?
I think the main one is ownership and privacy.
But with the missing policy, it's a triangle, right? You have like the ownership, you have privacy, and you have like policy. And in this triangle, with one of those breaks, you can have all the data you want, but if you can't use it, then it becomes problematic.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead.
Niels, I wanna give other people also
Yeah, sure.
time to
Yeah.
chat. Zoe has had his hand up for quite some time. So Zoe, you ready to Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I was learning lately about Atala Prism, and I have a big question there because I think the SSI thingy is very nice, but they say everything gets stored on one's own device, and I don't really get. In the FAQ is written that if the phone gets lost or the device, you have the seed phrase to restore it. And I don't really get how it can restore something if it's just stored on the device. A wallet. Ah, okay.
Yeah, no, Zoe, that's actually a critical point. Our team is actually, Snapbrillia, we're doing the Atala Prism Pioneer program right now.
Mhm.
I think what you're talking about with, so you're saying if you have a seed phrase, which is like a form of async, you know, public-private key, it's a different form of a private key, right? Then if your phone gets lost and your phone has a hardware wallet, say, and that is the only wallet in existence, then how do you recover something that technically is non-existent?
Yeah.
That's a conundrum. I would actually, does anyone in the breakout room have?
We got RootsID, Lance, right there. Lance, enlighten us.
Yes, I would love to say I have all the answers. I don't at all, but I will say that you know, we have a Fund 8 proposal that's called Roots Wallet Beta Backup and Restore. I think I'll post the link. But yeah, it is a so backup and store of an edge wallet, right, that sits on your phone. It has like a multitude of things that have to be restored, and so the parts that are connected to the blockchain, right, we use this big seed phrase that, you know, we keep super secret somewhere to restore that stuff, but you will have tons of interactions that are private, that are non-blockchain interactions. And so those could be credentials. It's also just the fact that you have a history with somebody, you know, via your DID, right? You create things, private interactions in the SSI space. We use DIDs, and specifically peer DIDs for those private interactions. And so these are things that no one who sees the blockchain know about. They are local to you. So there has to be this extra layer of backup that has to occur. And so for us, that's going to be very crude initially, assuming we get funded in Fund 8, that, that'll be something of essentially take the wallet that's local on the phone, find a very nice way to package it up, and allow you to export it as a like a zipped up file that you'll be able to put out on your own cloud storage. But then to, over time, advance that to things that, for instance, like, right, when you're working in the cloud, right, your Google Docs are saving, as you're working and things like that, right? So these are things that we've come accustomed to in a centralized, siloed world. It's a lot more complicated when it's sitting with you. And there are even concepts like, you don't want to ever give your keys, your private keys, to any one person, but there are ways to essentially give people parts of a key in order for you. Let's say you forgot and lost everything that you need. You could go to trusted parties and retrieve parts, and then be able to retrieve your information that's encrypted. So anyways, it is complicated, and it's a great question, and there are lots of people working hard to work that out. One other thing that I'll just kind of throw on there, when we talk about wallets, and their agents, the software systems that we're interacting with for our wallets, there's a concept of a cloud wallet that could be something that you you have a trusted party that's of your agent, and your local agent is interacting with that cloud agent. So that's just kind of another concept to keep in mind, that yeah, we have a concept of a cloud agent and an edge agent, and these things need to be able to interact seamlessly, and you need to not have to be very mindful of it. Sorry, I couldn't answer the question, but hopefully I helped.
Oh yeah, very much. Thank you. I'm just, if I can ask something back. So this cloud backup, is that inside of how it works, or is that something you'd have to do as a I don't know, self-sovereigning?
Are you talking specifically about a Prism, the like Cardano blockchain layer, or are you just speaking in general, like we're building Roots wallet, which is like your edge agent? Yeah, so if you're talking about just I guess in general with decentralized identity and SSI, these agents that you have, these are things that have to be built. They're not, it's not like Google right now has some service,
Okay.
and obviously not everybody would even trust that service. So there is you can think of kind of your peer-to-peer world that's been around for ages now, and started with Napster and all those kinds of things, even earlier actually than that. There is a concept of not having to rely on a siloed cloud provider like Google, and instead being able to use other services that are more decentralized. You could look up things like IPFS, which is like a cloud, a decentralized storage, and there are lots of services already being built in kind of the decentralized cloud world. And there's a lot to that. It's not just storage, right? There's hosting and witnesses and peers and all kinds of things that are necessary. So it gets pretty complex, but obviously it enables this beautiful thing that we're hoping for, which is SSI.
Awesome. And actually, Lance, I do have a follow-up question. Do you feel like IPFS is the leading kind of cloud backup storage provider for that architecture for you guys?
I am no I'm semi new to the space, but I will tell you that I've been involved in a lot of different areas in terms of peer-to-peer and decentralized identity and things like that. And IPFS comes up over and over and over again. So it seems to me to be.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And the file format, by the way, that you would be exporting from your wallet locally, what format do you think that would take the shape of? You mentioned zip, but
yeah, I don't know. That's all part of the proposal to look into those things. We're currently, just to be, above board. We were funded in Fund 7, small proposal. We're rapidly gaining momentum, just getting like an alpha release of the wallet out. And so the Fund 8 proposals are for these more, I guess, advanced features, we'll call them, although they'll be very basic for us to, really operate.
yeah, no, we at Snapbrillia are huge supporters of you guys. We have 8 engineers right now going through the Pioneer program for Teleprism. So
Awesome.
trying to level up to support you guys.
Yeah. We definitely need to work together because I guess, our hope is that we can help people gain momentum, in the wallet space quickly. Our stuff that we're building is open source, so anybody can contribute, anybody can use what we're building, and more than anything, we want to create an ecosystem that people feel very comfortable using. That's starting on Cardano, and so yeah, we all need to work together right now for sure. Very, stay close.
Yeah, love it. And actually, speaking of, like, I know we're hyper focused right now on identity and self-sovereign identity, but just to bring in the other part of this question, proof of reputation. So, and actually, Lance, this is a question for you as well. What other, beyond identity, what other types of information can users store in their wallet?
Well, the scope of identity is huge, right? And just any application that lives on your phone has information that's needed in order to operate. So we are trying to keep our scope as small as possible right now, right? Because we're getting started, and so we're very focused on the Prism side of things. So you have bids, you have verifiable credentials. You have kind of a log of the history of the information that the interactions that you've had between your wallet and others, issuers and verifiers. So I should say that when people talk about wallets in Cardano or just decentralized technology, an identity wallet is very different than like a crypto wallet. And so there are people that are trying to mix all of those things. And certainly, somewhere way in the future, we would want to see a convergence of wallets, right? All these things that we have kind of brought into a single place, or maybe we don't. I don't know. Because like I said, identity is huge. But I'm not sure of everything that'll end up getting stored there. It's just, identity is such a wide thing, right? So your medical records. Well, everything that's associated with your medical records is massive, right? But I do want to be able to control my medical records. Why does somebody else have it and I have to go request it, right, from them to send to somebody else for them to control? But if you just think about the complexity of all the information that goes in a medical record and is associated with a medical record, audit trails and everything, it's like the whole world when you start expanding.
Yeah, no, precisely. That's I guess I'm getting to, like, one of the practical applications that sits atop the school of thought that is technically proof of reputation would be this idea of an on-chain resume or practical resume or a proof of practical experience. It's essentially, in the way personally I kind of think about proof of reputation is like a non-financial proof of work or proof of work experience. So just to help the breakout room, like for definition's sake, proof of reputation, kind of like a non-financial form of proof of work or a proof of practical experience. Would anyone like to add their kind of definition of proof of reputation, or what does this evoke in you when you hear this phrase?
If I could, Fran, you're, it's really a function of how you acquire that information for proof of reputation. I have graduate degrees from 4 different institutions around the world. And all I can tell you is that none of them, even the most advanced, which is MIT, have a digital ID program that I can reference for proof of reputation. So when you look at the various universities and colleges around the world, it's going to be a massive undertaking to facilitate all of these kinds of structures. Not that it shouldn't be done, don't misunderstand me. I think it's a great opportunity, if you will. But then where do you hold all these things? Is there a central repository? And does the university believe that they have some right of ownership to that information? I think they do. In fact, I've talked to both Rice and MIT about this. And, they're profoundly interested in what's going on, but they want to retain their sense of ownership too. Just as in medical records, if a doctor is creating a medical record, they have certain ownership privileges in that. Now, you as in a self-sovereign identity role could limit the exposure of that beyond that individual, but that's all. So we've got an abridged capacity across the spectrum, both in reputation and in the process that validates that.
Yeah, brilliant points. I love how you mentioned this idea of MIT or Rice acting as a validator in this. So it's kind of like, imagine a ZK snark proof, essentially, that MIT can validate that you got a graduate degree, right? So if you're trying to prove your reputation to a potential employer that says that you have a graduate degree, it is verifiable through the MIT network. Technically, through the SSI ecosystem and through the ZK snark architecture, you could accomplish this without sharing any identifying information about yourself, so that that potential employer wouldn't be saving your email address for spam, or insert use case here where you don't want to leak your personal information. So I agree with you. I don't think, so the ownership question is actually more nuanced, as you're pointing out, which is spot on, because it's not always self-sovereign in terms of the individual doesn't always have automatic or somewhat implied ownership. Just, I guess what the word would be, the starting point in this kind of, imagine like a flow chart of like, you know, trying to figure out like what percent of its ownership is from the individual, what percentage is the organization. In the graduate degree model, it would be a false assumption to say that the individual 100% owns their degree, right?
It's true.
So what you're bringing up is like, I think the nuances of ownership here, like just looking through the lens of like Rice and MIT, what pieces of a degree do you think the schools would like to retain ownership of and why? You know?
They've yet to define that for me.
Yeah.
so I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but it's something that they're pondering, and of course they're not really fast at making decisions. My most recent conversation with Rice was 2 weeks ago, and all I can tell you is that it might be 2025 before they're ready to do any of that validation. Now, does that mean you can't get a valid reference? You can, but it's tedious. You know, you write to the registrar and they give you this sort of stuff. MIT is somewhat faster, but not that much faster. I've been to 2 universities in the UK as well, and you know, they haven't even given it a thought yet. So all I'm saying is maybe I can help you.
Oh yeah, oh, go ahead, Ninh.
Yeah, I was just
We could use all the help in the world. Thank you.
You definitely can help, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking, based on your question, Frank, and you know, I'm sorry, I was a little slow to catching on to, you know, that we're now kind of talking about reputation. But you know, thinking about Brian, what he was saying about these different universities, and you asking, you know, what information should they retain? I think one thing that will help when we can get to the point of selective disclosure, where you're only sending the information to, let's say, a university that you absolutely have to send in order for your relationship with them and the education that you're going to receive and their ability to give you credentials from your work. The problem of them retaining, you know, too much information at least becomes much better, much easier to tackle, right? Because you know, if you think about just your application to a university, I mean, you give them all of this information about yourself, and the real question is, you know, did they need to store that, right? Shouldn't it be like you know, like a zero knowledge proof or something that basically you check the box, right? You proved what you needed to prove, but they don't, you know, necessarily get to store it. And then also just that you've selectively disclosed only the things that you absolutely needed to, and so you're not too worried about what they have stored as much.
Yeah, brilliant point. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, just to highlight your point one step further is, you guys probably heard of admissions scandals and these different use cases where it's arguable that someone's ethnicity, say, is vital for a admissions decision. That's a philosophical argument. I've seen both sides of it, but with
Yeah.
selective disclosure, you could potentially protect the individual from bias use cases, perhaps, that go beyond just your reputation. I'll just leave it at that, but it's one use case. And also, Brian, you're about to say something further?
Yeah, well, you know, I've been through a number of those cases. My daughter was going to university in California, and they asked about her ethnicity. She's from Canada, by the way. So, sorry. So, and it was quite astounding because she was quite offended because her grandparents are Hispanic, and so is she Hispanic? And I said, well, I don't think you should not be proud of that. I think that's important. But she said, well, I said, but if you really want to know, talk to your grandparents. And she did. And they said, for the life of you, don't ever imagine putting anything Hispanic down on that application. It's stunning. I can tell you there's the longest street in Los Angeles is named after one of her great-great-grandfathers. So it's not, there's a lot of history in that. And it's something to be proud of, but it's also a target.
Yep.
In healthcare, which I've worked in for 40 years, I've stood in emergency rooms and watched while differences occurred for treatment for people of color versus people who are white. I think it's appalling, but that goes on. Somebody is I used to quote a story in one of my classes when I taught that you'd find somebody who was, a bit of a high income deadbeat on a gurney in the ER that is treated better than somebody who comes in simply because of the color of their skin. It's just terrible. And it doesn't just happen in the United States. It happens in the UK, I've worked there. It happens in France, I've worked there. It happens in Switzerland, where I've also worked. So I look for what we're doing with SSI to help the process of eliminating those biases.
Yep. Precisely. At least having protections against those biases. In these cases, you mentioned racism, sexism. And it includes even in the job application / recruitment process.
Yep.
If I'm hiring a talented, say, Pascal engineer or JavaScript engineer, it's arguable that I don't technically need to know your ethnicity or your gender. But that's a philosophical question. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Brilliant insights. Nick, I know you had your hand up as well.
Thanks, Frank. Hey guys, Nick from ProofSpace here. I was just wondering, when we're talking about the educational institutions, it could also include employers. Is the debate here whether or not we have the technology to fulfill reputation workflows using SSI, or is the debate whether the institutions are ready for that change?
Honestly, I would say somewhat both.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes.
I mean,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I just recognized in the conversation that there's sometimes we're talking about major institutions that perhaps aren't necessarily open to doing a huge technology transformation project using a relatively novel technology without having ways of testing it really quickly and without investing huge amounts. But is the question, I suppose is the question for you, Frank, is it one where there are a set of organizations that you're targeting and you're not sure how to navigate the institutional bureaucracy, the review committees, the risk committees, and so on? Or is it that you're not quite sure whether you can convince the technical teams at those organizations to use SSI to fulfill this function? Like, where are we focusing here?
I would say definitely both. And the reason being is because like we're doing Snapbrillia initially for two reasons. One is to facilitate and support. And actually, let me back up for a second. The on-chain practical resume idea is essentially a composable NFT of this SSI architecture applied to proof of reputation. So you have your issuers, your holders, and your verifiers. So the question one is like, who becomes an issuer in this network? Who can be verified, or the accolades from which, or the resources from which are granted / written to this composable NFT can be verified as legitimate. There are new members of the Web3 ecosystem like Snapbrillia, where we'd like to be one of these reputable issuers. But there are a lot of members of the analog world that should be technically members of this authoritative issuance council or group, including MIT, including Rice, because a graduate degree does speak a lot to your reputation. In addition to, if you come through Snapbrillia and you learn, say, Haskell, and you complete a full-scale project through either a bounty or a mentor-mentee project that we facilitate through Snapbrillia, then that is also building your reputation in the broadest possible definition. So it's like a conundrum, because like we need to include the broadest possible authoritative issuance members of this council to scale. But where we're starting right now is essentially at square one if we do not include any of those prior issuance members, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I mean, one interesting, I suppose there are kind of a few precedents that you can draw from in how these kinds of institutions end up making their decisions. And one is that there's sufficient body of evidence brought by the supplier that they've already proven out the tech stack in a equivalent situation. And so Snapbrillia are doing that with other programs, you know, definitely makes sense. But the other is, you know, the other component here is how easily can they test it? How easily can they get up and running with a proof of concept? And how much value can that proof of concept bring the end users if there's a limited number of possible verifiers? So this is where the role of to quite a large degree, this is where a role of trust registries and come in. So on the governance side, having for example, having common credential standards, credential schema that people in the network can trust and issue from and or verify from. And if you have an open network where any organization can issue a credential using that schema, any organization can verify that credential, you know, then the reputation of that credential is grounded in the reputation of the issuing party. You don't necessarily need to limit it. So if MIT becomes an issuer, obviously that credential is worth a hell of a lot more than if I issue it to you. No one cares. but I could issue it. It would just be a matter of, you know, that's kind of like a self-regulated environment where people trust who they want to trust. I think the other aspect of this is in the is going beyond the governance and into the ease of adoption. So if a verifying party has to integrate an SDK and build some server-side solution and a client-side solution, probably not a client-side solution, but some server-side solution to actually reliably verify a credential, it's a bit of an adoption bottleneck. There's another technical barrier to widespread institutional adoption. If all of these institutions all have to implement complex SDKs to roll up and play the game. So this is another challenge that we have to think about in terms of broadening the adoption of SSI beyond a narrow technical audience. And I think, you know, bringing it back to the first point that I said, the proof of concept thing is so important. Technical teams need to be able to run a proof of concept so they can take it to their commercial teams, or they can take it to their risk teams, and so on. And it's such a fundamental thing for us growing adoption. I think it really applies to what we're talking about with these big institutions that you're trying to pitch to, Frank. So sorry, I went on a bit of a spiel there, but it's but it seemed like the right moment to share those thoughts.
Oh no, Nick, brilliant. I mean, I think this is we could have an entire breakout room just on the verifying party piece of this. And what you talked about, accessibility, meaning the old method would be to design some proprietary SDK and then try to get everyone to adopt your proprietary SDK, right? But what's somewhat beautiful about the SSI body of research that we're trying to apply to proof reputation is why not combine them? Because it's hard enough to get people to adopt an open standard of one school of thought, let alone two. So, and also the proof of concept piece is critical. You mentioned, I could actually, James, I think James from our team is on the call, but we are getting into, actually, I won't get into Gitpod yet, because that's a whole other rabbit hole. But yeah, definitely, I would say, I would love for all of us to actually meet up like every week if you guys can. Just to monitor progress and weigh in, because, and also, by the way, we are, planning on forming essentially like a decentralized autonomous organization around the composable NFT / on-chain resume piece of this, so that if you are an issuer and you're seeking verification, then you would go through a standard process to achieve that. But we can't, if we're the only verifiers, then we're limited by the size of our team, we're limited by rules and regulations in the region that you're operating within. There's so many factors at play. So I think, yeah, this is another rabbit hole, but essentially the aspect of like a DAO operating around verification may be critical for this to really scale. Meaning, we're not saying that's like Snapbrillia, we're just trying to be an issuer in this chain among thousands of issuers for millions of holders, for potentially hundreds of thousands of verifiers. So yeah, also, Allison, I know your hand's up. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far. Please feel free to share if you have an insight. But Nick, there's way more to talk about here. Let's all meet up again, please. I'll go ahead.
No, let's do it. Thanks for your response, Frank. I'm raising some deliberately tricky things. I don't expect clear answers. I don't have clear answers for lots of this stuff. But I would love to talk a bit more about what you're doing here, because I think ProofSpace solves a small part of the problem, and if we can help you guys, then we'd be happy to.
Yeah, and Nick, are you part of any proposal or project in the Catalyst kind of ecosystem?
Yeah, we submitted a Fund 7 project to integrate Prism into the ProofSpace platform, and ProofSpace is essentially it's an identity network wrapped with no-code tooling for building, validating, and scaling self-sovereign identity workflows really fast.
Got it. And what is the name of that again?
It's called ProofSpace. Whoever controls the board has just written it on there. So yeah, we got the funded F7 proposal, and that's well underway, making great progress, and hopefully that will mean that we can get more Prism projects to production using the no-code capability, and that includes all of the kind of configuring privacy controls like selective disclosure and zero knowledge predicates and all that sort of cool stuff.
Got it. That's fantastic. Because as mentioned, we are doing the Prism Pioneer program with our team, and we've been studying like RootsID and some other projects in that sphere. So yeah, we'd love to have a ProofSpace, maybe deep dive, to see if there's any way we can integrate that into our kind of collection of on the SSI side. Like if you have a ProofSpace ID wallet, say, or you're using your services, then how can you come through Snapbrillia as an issuer to gain technical practical experience for your resume in order to become an engineer or land a job or something, you know? Like questions like this, which interoperability is paramount. So
yeah, let's go through a few, you know, MVP workflows, and we can see where we plug in.
yeah, fantastic, fantastic.
Cheers, Frank.
Yep, cheers. And multiple hands up. Allison, I know you've been very patient.
Sure, and I'm not sure my comment is relevant right at this moment. I really appreciate the more technical side of things that you and Nick were just diving into, but I wanted to go back to the bias issues that Brian was referencing to comment kind of two sides of the same point. The first is I'm not at all convinced that SSI will address the bias issue. I think it's a tool, and I think it's a really good tool. I'm a Teleprism pioneer. I have Fund 8 proposals that I'm really excited about to use SSI, but I don't think that it by itself is going to change the bias that exists in the world. I think that theoretically, using zero knowledge proofs, you could have a reputation system where you choose not to disclose your ethnicity, your gender, or whatever. But at the end of the day, as soon as somebody meets me, they're going to know I'm a woman, and no SSI. I mean, that's how I choose to present myself, and no SSI would change that. So I'm open to being challenged on that, but I don't know that SSI alone is the solution for the bias issue that's very endemic in our society. Having said that, on the other side of the coin is that it is really important to think about the ethics of these new technologies that we are deploying. And it was one of my very favorite things about the Prism Pioneers course was the emphasis on thinking about ethical use of the technology, not just learning how to code, but thinking about the virtuous use of these incredibly powerful technologies so that they do end up making things better, which I think is all of our goal, and not creating worse problems. So I'm actually a very practical person, so that's probably the most abstract statement that I could be making, but I really was moved by what Brian was sharing and wanted to give my thoughts.
Yeah, Allison, I can totally agree 100%, right? Technology on its own won't solve anything. It is a great tool actually to build a solution, and the solutions depend on the use case. For us, the reason why we wanted to build the proof of reputation and marry them into an SSI, and also focus on diversity, equity, inclusion at the same time, seems like conflicting, a lot of times conflicting, right? If I'm gonna put that I'm a male, I'm Asian on chain, then it's there forever. And if it's not, designed with privacy in mind, then organizations can exploit it, right? I have a bunch of pictures, bunch of stuff on Facebook, everywhere. I'm a pretty public person, right? But the data, even though they say, yeah, right, we all do. The data, although this supposedly is owned by me, right? But really, those organizations, the big companies, big tech companies, are making money on running ads or whatever recommendation systems. So we really want to build something, and design something, architect something in mind that empowers the individual, right? The problem of diversity, equity, inclusion is a lot of times about access to equal opportunities, right? And there's a ton of problems. It's like literally we can talk about it in another breakout room, just about DEI. But for us, I think the reason why we are building the proof of reputation is because if you like get a job, right? You sign an NDA and confidentiality agreement, and whatever you work on and you get paid for, unless it's open source, it's private, right? And anyone can just, put whatever they want on the resume. And because of that, like when I'm going into interview, right? I have to prove my work. I have to convince the interviewer and, or do a coding test, right? Which actually doesn't measure my skill. It just measures if I practice the coding test or not. In an open source world where you see your commits and your pull requests being accepted, right? That's almost like a proof of reputation, and it does serve as a proof of reputation in many ways, because I talk to recruiters at Amazon, Google, and all kinds of big companies, and they're learning how to find people on GitHub based on their projects, right? And in the same way, I want to empower people to have, a trusted source of their reputation, and wean off the centralized, Facebook and LinkedIn and other places like that, where they don't really control their data, right? In order to get access to more opportunities. So SSI, DID, Intel Hyperledger, I love it all. It's great. It's very much needed, right? But for us, it's just about how we build it, how we design it, what is the use case. I have my UX designers here, so they listen to this as well and they learn. It's really, really important. I talked to Lohan at IoT he also works on like experiential learning.
He's next door as we speak.
Yeah, I know. So he's like, yeah, like ultimately companies, they just need to hire. There's such demand for people, for devs, but there's no opportunities for people. And we all know, I've been a job seeker in my life. When I graduated from Berkeley, and at that time, I also needed experience to get more experience, right? I believe that building some form of proof of reputation, we can level the playing field for people, regardless of who you are, and give them access to more opportunities this way.
Yeah, I have some questions. Maybe the first for Ninh. Yeah, it sounded like you connected SSI and reputation systems. Or did you just talk about reputation systems? Or do you see them as connected?
Yeah, we are building a reputation system, and we want to store it in an SSI wallet, connected to SSI wallet, because otherwise, it would be again centralized by us or another company. We do want to decentralize it and just become one of the nodes, whether issuer or verifier, however it gets built, right? And invite other people, other organizations to participate. Ultimately, I want to be realistic. Like, people have LinkedIn. There's, I don't know how many, like billion people. They always raise the number of users they have, including the fake ones, right? But ultimately, we want to empower people to build enough credentials, CNFTs, whatever, right? Enough of their reputation on SSI, enough data on SSI, that they don't really need, they can just go ahead and delete their LinkedIn, right? In order to be able to compete fairly for an opportunity. So we're all about empowering the user. I think Charles talks about this like all the time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he just, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. Okay. This means that you would also, like, you can self-sovereign the identity. You can also have complete control over the reputation.
Yes.
Is that basically it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with one caveat, because we do have, like, one of the attractions of proof of reputation in this architecture is immutability. So the fact that you can just update your LinkedIn profile right now with anything you'd like, and no one's going to test you or validate that, and that depending on who you're interviewing with, you could basically trick someone with dishonesty or whatever you know, whatever you may like. Immutability is at least some form of honesty, meaning, you know, if you can only earn your reputation through verifiable issuers, we think this is just a fundamentally better system to protect against, in the most general sense, dishonesty, which is a natural human flaw that we've seen time and time again in history. So you may be able to add, and we're debating this right now, and this is why we're making this open source. So if you'd like to add something to your practical resume on chain, I think people should be free to do so, but that will come with the ability to verify if that was issued by an authoritative issuer or not, or verified issuer or not. Meaning we have a strong feeling that anything you earn through verified issuance would naturally have more value on your practical resume versus not. So the incentive kind of reward system around this is to encourage people to be honest and to earn their reputation. And therefore, when you're speaking with someone and you're reviewing their resume, you have peace of mind, at least that the network of issuers is verified, and this person, there's no room for dishonesty. Technically, mathematically, there's a little bit of room, but that would be a pretty complex scheme of some issuer corroborating with a user, which this is the ways to protect against dishonesty on the issuer side is actually a very intriguing line of thought. But just to add that supplement.
Yeah, so, okay, I just had a light bulb moment. I think that I was kind of dystopia biased by reputation as this, oh, you have to be a better person and stuff. But I think I now understood that it's more about what you did is also verified, and not about, you know, giving you reputation for some random stuff you did. It's just more about what you really did. Thanks for the light bulb moment.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Nice.
And that's why it's important for us to define reputation together, because that is somewhat of a, you know, reputation is such a general term. It could fall under so many schools of thought, but for proof of reputation in the sense of what we're like, Snapbrillia at least would be an issuer of technical skills. So you can come to us and you can verifiably work on bounties similar to Gitcoin in the Ethereum ecosystem. It's you know, we have a bounty network in the Cardano ecosystem, but we also have a mentor-mentee network where you can train under essentially an apprenticeship through a verifiable issuer, but the issuer in this case would be a mentor. So the issuer does not always have to be an organization. It can be an individual, an expert. So say if Brian has graduate degrees and he's a verifiable expert in something, it might be a nice supplement, but yeah, and by the way, we're one of many issuers, by the way. We're just a place where if you'd like to become like a software engineer, say, you could likely find a pathway through Snapbrillia, just like you can find a pathway through Udemy or Coursera, except the difference is that this is, and maybe Udemy and Coursera can become verified issuers at some point. But yeah, just want to point out that the issuer does not always have to be like, you don't have to picture the DMV or the federal government always. It can be a mentor. So just to highlight that further on the P2P side.
Couldn't that create like a infinite chain of being verified? You wouldn't have a point of certainty. You would always have a reference. Is that? I'm sorry.
This is the nature this is the nature of decentralized governance. You know, we're so used to anchoring our trust in some known authority, and so lots of the early use cases for self-sovereign identity will be around in areas where self-sovereign identity mirrors the existing systems of trust that we have in the world. And that's why convincing institutions, whether it's MIT or Coursera or Udemy, these are all organizations, enabling the trust and authority that those organizations hold to be useful in a decentralized world is something that SSI can do. And the question of what the root authority is, what the, you know, where does this chain of verification end? It's as long as the individual's record of identity is. So reputation will represent a suite of credentials within the broader identity that you hold. An identity should be defined very broadly here. So the answer is whichever organizations you have interacted with, whom you wish to be representative of your reputation. Those can all be roots. That doesn't have to be a single root. And some of the stuff that Tony Rose is doing in the US, getting SSI included into the formal legislative structures, that's what brings our more traditional notion of a root of trust into this world of decentralized identity. But there's a hell of a lot that can be done in between those two extremes.
Awesome. Yeah, and I want to switch gears. I think we discussed a lot of this already. I know Frank had to hop off because he has a meeting, so I'll take over from him with chains. But I think we already have a very decentralized discussion here, right? I'd love to ask you guys why is why SSI or proof of identity and reputation matters to you? Why does it matter to you guys? Why is it important? Why should anyone care? Go ahead, Allison.
Well, I just would echo the point you were making earlier about the big platforms that are silos of our data and hold all of the power when it comes to our ability to log in and access those connections. So if LinkedIn decides they want me to leave the platform, I lose everything that I've ever put on LinkedIn. And actually, that's not a theoretical analogy for me. I had lived in Europe, I'm gonna date myself here, but a long time ago, and I had a Hotmail account. And there were people that I connected to only through Hotmail. And when I moved back to the US, I have no idea why, but my entire account got deleted. And I complained to Hotmail and there was no explanation for what had happened and no way to retrieve the data. And so I literally lost connections with people that I had only had their contact information stored in my email database. So lesson learned for me. But I think the reason why SSI matters is that it gives me control over that data. It's not stored in a silo somewhere. It stops those big organizations from being honeypots for people for hackers to attack to get a whole lot of data. If they hack into my wallet, they only get my information. They don't get millions or tens of millions or billions of people's data. And it stops me being the product and losing control over who sees my data and how my data is used. I'm in control. It gives me control over that information. So that's my my initial thoughts.
Yeah, right on, Alison. I've probably had a couple of my LinkedIn profiles taken down. I've since learned how to play by their rules, but yeah, like you mentioned, recommendations, connections, everything gone, right? And now if you want to play by the rules, you got to start over, and that's a huge loss, right? I think I lost all my connections from my time in school. If you're a business owner that depends on LinkedIn, right? Even worse. Now, anyone else wants to chime in?
Censorship resistance. If you see what's happening in the world of big tech, the upgrading of terms of services, that they start to share data between each other. So if you misbehave on one platform, you're gonna get banned on the other. What I liked about Len's remark is the peer-to-peer communication channels. But it's such a complicated topic because in essence, it boils back to trust. And trust is a difficult topic. And it boils back to even, I hear a lot of organizations, third-party organizations, but if you talk about distribution, we should also distribute education, we should distribute food, we should distribute everything. So in that regard, focusing on the existing hierarchies, I don't know. So it's a difficult topic, but I think these discussions with a big group, a lot of cognitive diversity, at least gives us the different perspectives and the ethics of it all boils down to making an internet of values instead of an internet of a big giant supermarket, I guess.
Niels, can you elaborate more on the internet of values? I like that term.
Yeah, me and Tim are working on a network of trust, which is more about the relation between the DITs or SSI value data in SSI. Talking about the network of values, I'm in the process of setting up Social Design Academy. And what's the biggest question still in Catalyst is how the heck do we trust each other? How do we know what our values are, where we come from, how we operate? And I do a lot of work with Row, with ADA Gov, and we came to the conclusion, or partly to the conclusion that we need to create some sort of personal brand. And this personal brand is built up of your values, the meaning of your work, the ethical layer of your work. But even if you think you're delivering a really ethical solution, let's say ProofSpace, I believe was the name, it is a real cool tool, but still it's centralized in some shape or form in the technical stack. It's still not censorship resistant, right? So the complexity of what we're trying to achieve here has so many dimensions. But if you turn it around and think about if we can build a network of values, and we can have trust on the values the people portray, because reputation is in essence the result of action, I think we can build something new. And by having this Internet of Values as an endpoint or a thing to work towards, we perhaps know better what we need to do as a group to get there. Hope that gives a bit of insight perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Niels, there. It's not just that we build SSI, but we have to build the governance frameworks around it, right? I think in the trust registry, there's a, part of it is the management team. And what does that look like? Is that centralized or is that also decentralized? So for us, Frank is a huge fan of DAOs. We're gonna build the DAO to empower others, right? To contribute, join, make decisions, because ultimately, we want to build this bigger than ourselves, bigger than our company, right? Bigger than just jobs. And because of that, we need everyone's help and collaboration. I love that that it's a value-based system, right? The collaborators, the people that are gonna join and make the decisions should more or less at least have the common values, which is empower the people, not the big organizations. Zoe.
Yeah, I think that it really much opens up to really basic ideas, like or basic. It looks basic at first sight, and when you think about it, it is constructed and stuff. And I think that again here we have a tool and we can use it in a nice way and stuff. And I have to say, I'm very much happy that it is happening now with such a pace in an open source, with an open source approach and with a decentralized approach. Because, yeah, I sometimes have very much concerns about stuff like this, especially when it's permanent. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that it's happening in this environment that is concerned about such stuff too, kind of.
Yeah, totally, Zoe. I listened to Charles' 5-minute or 10-minute, or I think 30-minute talk on Cardano Summit. He's a rich man already, we all know, right? But he cares more about impact and not building a system that benefits the elite, the wealthy, the people in the top, but really empowering everyone, right? I am not rich as Charles, or rich by any means, but I think we have passion and desire to make a change and impact. And I see on Catalyst many people here, like Nick with ProofSpace, Niels, Ashton. I know Patrick is a huge champion for open source, and we are too. And just listening to the community here, it's just extremely inspiring, right? But very importantly, we need feedback. We need people to help. All of us need, not just Snapbrillia. And talking about governance oversight, right? Some kind of oversight to make sure that what we're building, has the values of the community, is right. Because there is a right way and wrong way to build it, for sure, right? Awesome. All right, any other thoughts, guys? Then we're hitting almost 90 minutes, 89 minutes right now.
Yeah, perhaps a business model I can throw in for everybody to take home and think about. I mean, LinkedIn looks at reputation from the past. And I think it's more important if we want to work towards a world that's new, that we might create a reputation for our future. And that means that you more or less create tools that enable people to discover themselves or their field they want to work in or where they want to work towards instead of looking backwards. Yeah, that was my last 50 cents.
Awesome. Thank you, Niels. I like your 50 cents. Awesome. Ashton, Patrick, anything to share?
I had a lot to learn in this direction. But like you said, I'm really in favor of working in a shared way, because this is a proof of what you did. And I still have learned a lot about decentralized identity and sense sovereign one. Thanks for providing this amazing content.
Thanks for being here. Always happy to have you. Ashton?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what's already been said. Just the one thing that's a little bit challenging, not that we don't have enough challenges, is that on the one hand, you really do want a way to legitimize a person's identity, but on the other hand, you don't necessarily want them to have to make it their own identity, because, for instance, it's helpful if you can trust the person because you know who that person is. But if it always points to that one person, like here's another example. Here's another example. So I used to write letters for Amnesty International, and the question on my mind a little while ago was, how would blockchain technology be useful for an organization like that? Because in one sense, you have a tool that would give everyone an ability to put their letters, not just to the countries that are keeping prisoners of conscience, but put it somewhere that it could be seen, so that it could be more of a force. At the same time, those same letters can then be used to target those individuals for the future. So there's some there's a contradiction there. Anyways, that's like the one thing that I think has other facets or other examples of that are similar to that. But yeah, so that's all. That's all I have to say right now. I have to think about this one more.
Thank you, Ashton. Yeah, we like DID and SSI is in its infancy. Right, there's a lot of work, even infrastructure building. I love what ProofSpace, ProofSpace.id, RootsID, Prism are doing. I highly recommend everyone to go through the Prism class just to understand the concept. We're like literally at the beginning. If you guys think of how internet at the 40, 50 years ago, time flies. I don't even know, it used to be 30 years ago, and now it's like 40, 50 years ago. Building infrastructure of self-sovereign identity, meaning people can own their data, their money, their wallet, their identity, their reputation, their careers, right? As a basic human right. And we're really, really lucky that we have like giants like RG, like Hyperledger, and so many others investing so much in this infrastructure. Imagine, no matter who you're born and how you're born, right? Or where you're born in Africa, because of your reputation, being able to you know, get a amazing job, right? And take care of your family, unlocking opportunities. Yeah, there's so many use cases. We're really at the beginning of it all, and the future is very exciting, very bright. That's why we wanted to invest in this. Ashton, many challenges for sure, right? But the people here are also extremely smart. I believe together we do have enough brains to pull this through. Brain and passion, both. Awesome. Anyone else? We have some questions in the chat from Jay. How are we planning to deliver a technical solution without a technical founder with experience in blockchain? You know, that's tough. I would say if you are trying to deliver a technical solution in SSI without a technical founder, it's going to be tough. Just find one. And that can be much easier said than done. However, again, if you guys check out our quadratic voting funding, if you're able as a non-technical person, secure funding, post a bounty, then you can attract developers for sure. Or you can go with something like ProofSpace.id as a no-code setup SSI solution, and simply easily integrate into your solution. Right. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Feel free to leave your contact on the Jamboard. Right. I have a Google form there too. We are nearing the end. Hope to see you again sometime soon.
Can I say one more thing before we end?
Yeah. Go ahead, Ash.
So it had the idea the other day that I remember when cell phones were just coming into being, not many people had them. And it was kind of like not just a luxury, but like, you know, it really was a brick you carried around and not really many people did it. And I get the feeling now that hardware wallets are exactly like this. In fact, and the reason why I bring it up is if for whatever reason hardware wallets became the standard where everyone had a hardware wallet, not just a cell phone, but a hardware wallet too, that might make things like this far more easier because we'd have that to build off of. And so it might be worth considering.
Absolutely. When you think of why people buy like iPhones or Androids, like it's because of the utility. Right? The more stuff that you have on your SSI wallet, your reputation instead of your LinkedIn, right? The more utility you'll have from it. Like I can literally get my phone, and then I have like 100 apps on it, right? For everything, work, personal life, leisure, whatever. Connect with family. As long as we are able to, you know, again, technology is one thing, use case is another. Right, provide more use cases, utility for people, then hardware wallets will become more and more feasible. Right? Everything becomes more feasible. The faster your internet you get, the more stuff you can do with it. Right. Awesome. And I want to just mention one thing, just to like inspire a little bit of hope. Like similar with the internet. Right? There's a lot of work upfront that needs to get done, right? But the work that needs to get done for SSI to be adoptable and usable and provide real value for people, there's a finite number. It's not infinite. Right? There's a finite number for something to be valuable to people. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. You guys will be all on YouTube soon, hopefully, and thanks for joining.
Thank you.